nothing left to lose. We paid all our dues. It's time to end this abuse, and we will never, 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 never give in.
We're ready to refuse. They're taking without giving all their don'ts and do's.
Just for us to make a living. First they steal away our dignity, and now it's their intention to have us die in poverty
And steal away our pensions, got the steal more blues. We got nothing left to lose. We paid all our dues. It's time to end this abuse, and we will never, 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 never give in.
And that is, as you can imagine, the Steal More Blues. Very, very catchy. It's from a work in progress called Pray for the Dead, a musical tale of morgues, moguls, and mutiny. Very alliterative there. And we are very pleased to have with us the author, the source of that, Gene Bruskin, on the air with us. Yes. Gene, welcome to Your Right to Work.
Thank you, Chris, and thank you, Elise.
You're welcome, Gene.
So this is our holiday show. So we're sort of thought we'd loosen. I was always trying to figure out a way I could get some labor art into this show, because usually we deal with rights, union rights, and but actually your show kind of fits right into that, doesn't it?
Yeah, I think it's an attempt to use culture and music and theater to talk about the kind of things that you discuss on the show and that union members deal with every day. But there's a certain power and intimacy that theater can have if it's done right and if it's done with workers in mind.
Now, Gene, you retired a couple of years ago. You had a nearly 40-year career as a labor organizer, so going around and organizing workers, dealing with, frankly, with a lot of the issues that we talk about on this show every week in terms of, what are your rights on the job, how to get those rights, how to hold those rights. Lisa and I were just talking a little while ago. You might have a legal right, but that doesn't mean that the boss can't, try and run right over you, which you may have seen a few times in that career, right?
Yeah, I've seen it everywhere I've gone, all over the country, and that was part of my motivation for this play. To try to sort of bring the emotion and the pain and the excitement of what it means both to be oppressed but also to rise up together. And so this is sort of a story that encapsulates, for me, a lot of my experiences in my 40 years of organizing, and does it with music and with humor, and hopefully, really connects to an audience that usually doesn't go to theater, because most commercial theater, there's still a lot of great community theater going on, but most commercial theater is really directed toward a relatively small audience. I'm calling my play Theater for the 90%, because the mainstream theater, even the good mainstream theater, and there definitely is some, it's expensive, it's marketed and sort of developed for an audience that can afford it. I think theater, in a lot of ways in our country, has been almost become like opera, like it's only for certain people. And yet we have a tremendous history in the labor movement, particularly before World War II, when workers' theater and plays by and about for workers were really popular and powerful and well-attended. But a lot of that, not all of it, but a lot of that has fallen off since then. So I think we need to revive that. I know Elise has been a part of that, and you certainly have been a big supporter of that notion, Chris.
Well, let me turn to Elise, actually, who does, as you point out, have just a little bit of experience in the theater realm, and get your thoughts on this, Elise. Because I mean, seriously, you come out of theater and
Yeah.
done a lot of it, including some shows recently. You direct the DC Labor Corps, so you know a little bit about the mix of the movement and music.
Well, I have to agree with Gene that there's lots of little theater that happen, and there's still some little theater. It's just that Broadway overshadows in the same way that Hollywood overshadows any independent filmmaking. And this play, Pray for the Dead, it's a musical satire. And I tell people it's like Brecht. It's like Bertolt Brecht come back alive channeled through Gene Bruskin, in that it's a story that is on the side of the sarcasm, but also and funny in that, but with these great songs and
Great song. Can I just say, Gene, the story, we're not even going to get into explaining the whole story because it's actually fairly complicated. Somewhat complicated. But it's a story of it's about fighting the bosses, basically,
right.
Is how I put
workers
it.
Organizing.
But I got to tell you, come for the music is my point. Right? The songs are just fabulous.
Oh, it's clever. It's clever. And the characters. I mean, I think that the story, the way Gene develops the story, you have to get engaged. You have to, because I can see myself in it.
And Gene, one of the main characters, if not the main character, is modeled on a real-life labor heroine.
Right. There is a narrator. That's sort of how the play moves. There's what character who's only named for most of the play till the very end is the old lady, and she's obviously very wise, but you can't quite figure out who she is. She's a cleaning lady, and she's telling the story of this unlikely worker uprising that happened. And she's modeled really after Mother Jones, and that's what the title of the play, Pray for the Dead, which the rest of that sentence is, and fight like
hell for the living.
Which is Mother Jones, who was really a legendary late 18th century, early 19th century organizer.
Right.
But also the flip side of that is, in my image of her, is my mother. So that's sort of who that
I love that.
character is. And at the very end of the play, you find out the true identity of who the old lady is. But we'll save that.
It's classic.
But what you're saying about the music is, for me, I grew up in my house. We had Broadway musicals on all the time, and when I realized when I was thinking about doing this was that a lot of times when people go to something that is a musical, they really remember they end up singing the songs, so they remember the songs much more detail than sometimes they do any particular line in the play. And also, I've always felt, and certainly the labor chorus is the best example, is that when people hear music and when people can sing, their faces change. You watch people in the audience, watching the labor chorus, and they're all smiling. Even some people who, when they're not singing, look like they're totally depressed. But the minute they start singing, this whole other side of them comes out. And so I feel like the music very much is central to the effectiveness of the play.
I heard that Billy Bragg was interviewed on a show I was listening to last night, and I hadn't heard Billy in a long time. He's this great, came out of punk rock, but he talked about writing, and he writes his songs from rage, from being angry about what he sees in the world. And it's interesting because he's written a lot of love songs as well, political love songs, but he was very clear that that's where his sort of inspiration comes from, is anger at what he sees and really wanting to use that. And to both of you, I guess, honestly, when I was, Gene, if anybody could pull this off, it would be you. But when I thought, geez, the world was not exactly waiting for another labor musical. But I think that where both of you are coming from is this is simply another tool or weapon, if you will.
As Bertolt Brecht would say.
Exactly, in the battle for social justice. Is that right for both of you? Gene, I'll put it to you first.
Yeah, I think it absolutely is. I feel like that ultimately our movement can't win without culture. Like that, you can't imagine the civil rights movement in the United States if they couldn't sing. You can't imagine the anti-apartheid movement in South Africa if they couldn't sing and dance, and all the poetry and all the other
theater.
forms of art. And theater has been essential to both of those movements and to all movements. So, you know, I feel like I'm just making a small contribution to trying to get people to realize that we can't ignore this vehicle. We need it. We need it badly.
And let me ask, maybe throw this to Elise then. I think that Gene's really hit on something in that while music has certainly become much, perhaps, and in fact, we're going to have a show on this and have some of the musicians from the Musicians Union in, because the industry is facing huge challenges, and certainly the union musicians are facing huge challenges because anybody can just, make and distribute music, on their phone these days. But theater, in a lot of ways, has been marginalized for a long time. As Gene was saying, it's Broadway. It's something that is expensive and does not really have a lot to do with my life. And so, for at least this is something that you've done a number of shows. You've been involved in it for years. How can people like Gene, who are trying to bring theater to the masses, to the people, what do you think? What would your advice to Gene be here?
Well, my advice to Gene is that you start with a small theater, and you build the word, and this it is the word of mouth that is still the most powerful tool. I mean, with all the social
word
media,
of mouth.
if people don't know about it and they're not talking about it, it's not happening.
Right.
And that's what I've done in the past. And when we did Forgotten in 2004 at the National Labor College, I mean, nobody knew. Labor Jazz Opera, who knew? And we had 125 seat house, sold out 2 weeks before. Never happens in labor theater. Sold out 2 weeks before. Next time we moved to a slightly larger house, same thing. It is the word of mouth, and it's doing it enough times so people get to see it. And I think Gene's idea of like starting with union conferences and conventions as a way to do the play is absolutely. Shakespeare said it. The play is the thing to capture the conscience of the king, and if you want to get the message out, theater is a great way to do it.
But let me say in that regard, and thank you for that thought, at least, is that for those listeners who are interested, there are going to be two professional dramatic reading singings of this play that are going to happen in the beginning of the year. One is January 26th in Washington, D.C. One is February 9th in Northern Virginia. And if the listeners go to firstdraft.org, that's the sponsor of these two events.
Excellent.
You can make a reservation for free. But I urge you to make a reservation because these aren't big venues, and they're very possibly, or hopefully, they're going to be filled up.
Yes.
And if folks want to know more about Pray for the Dead, there's a website with a sort of video and some more information. If you go to GoFundMe.com/Pray for the Dead, you can see. Learn more about what we're up to here, and I think it's exciting the interest that it's already received, and I hope that we can get union folks to these performances so they can go back to their unions and say this is something we want to support, we want to bring to our membership, because that's really where it belongs.
Absolutely. Yep. When we have on our dclabor.org, we have both of the readings are on our calendar, along with links to Gene's GoFundMe page, which is great. It's got just a really good backstory on what's going on. So, Gene, we really appreciate you spending a few minutes with us on this Christmas Eve, and wish you terrific luck in 2016. I hope we'll be able to have some of this in the Labor Fest in May.
I hope so, and I'll just say to both of you that you have both been a great inspiration to me in terms of your understanding and importance and the work you've done to promote labor culture. So I am in the wake of the good work you're doing. I'm trying to sort of follow up. Thank you.
Absolutely. Thanks so much, Gene. Have a great holiday.
Thank you, brother.
You too.
As Gene Bruskin, recently retired, longtime union organizer, and now playwright. I mean, at least seriously, I think you have just inspired. I've had people. Josh Williams, a retiring president of the Labor Council. You know, he may be coming to you for some lessons. This could be a whole new thing happening here.
Absolutely.
You know?
Let's do it.
Now, speaking of which, you brought a little something to close out the show today, musically. Would you like to set that up for us?